Ex-boyfriend grabbed shy waitress during her shift. Unaware Mafia boss was watching from the bar. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. It was an ordinary Friday night in New York City. The city was alive with the sounds of honking cars, street performers, and the constant rush of people eager to finish their workday and head into the weekend. Inside the busy Italian restaurant on Fifth Avenue, Ellie was weaving through the crowded tables, her tray of drinks steady in her hands. At just 24 years old, she was already working 3 jobs to pay off her mounting student loans and cover her rent. She had no choice but to push through exhaustion, even if it meant hiding the bruises on her arms with long sleeves and makeup. Her life had never been easy, but tonight felt heavier than usual. As she moved toward table 7, her heart raced in anticipation of the upcoming shift change. Her thoughts wandered back to Tyler, her ex-boyfriend, the man who'd once promised her the world but had slowly turned into someone she feared. Their breakup had been messy, violent even, but Tyler refused to let her go. He still texted her, showed up at her apartment, and often found ways to intimidate her, no matter how hard she tried to escape. Tonight, as she approached another table, she saw him. Tyler. He had walked in without her noticing, and now he was glaring at her from across the room. Her stomach dropped. She tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, suffocating. He'd always been unpredictable. 1 minute, sweet and charming. The next, a monster. Tonight, she had a bad feeling about it. He stood up from his table, his eyes locking onto hers with a look she knew all too well. He wasn't just mad. He was furious. Ellie's heart pounded in her chest as he made his way toward her. She didn't know what he wanted this time, but she knew it wouldn't end well. Her grip on the tray tightened, her fingers going cold. She tried to turn away, to lose herself in the crowd, but it was too late. Tyler was already right behind her. You thought you could get away, huh? Tyler's voice was low, but the anger in it was unmistakable. Ellie froze. He grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back with a force that made her gasp. Let go of me. Ellie managed to shout, her breath catching in her throat as he yanked her towards the back door. But just as she tried to pull away, a figure appeared from the shadows, blocking their path. A tall man, sharply dressed in a black suit, stepped forward. Ellie didn't know who he was, but his presence felt different. Powerful. He was no ordinary customer. The man's gaze shifted from Ellie to Tyler, and without a word, he extended a hand. Let her go. The man's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made Tyler stop dead in his tracks. Tyler sneered, his grip tightening on Ellie's arm. Who the hell are you? The man didn't flinch. I said let her go. There was something in his eyes, something dark and unwavering. Tyler's bravado faltered for just a moment, and that was all the man needed. He stepped forward, his presence overwhelming. In one swift motion, he grabbed Tyler by the wrist and twisted it, forcing him to release Ellie. Tyler yelped in pain, stumbling backward. You don't know who you're messing with. Tyler spat, but the man didn't react, merely watching him with cold indifference. Ellie stood there, trembling, as the man turned his attention to her. His eyes were intense, but not unkind. Are you all right? He asked softly, though his tone held a quiet authority. Ellie couldn't find her voice. She was too shaken, too confused. Why had he intervened? She didn't know him, yet he seemed to know exactly what was going on. The man reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a business card and handing it to her. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. He gave her one last look, then turned and walked away, his steps deliberate and confident. Ellie stood there, stunned, the card still in her trembling hand. What had just happened? Who was this man? Why had he stepped in when no one else would? The sound of Tyler's voice brought her back to reality. You won't get away with this, he shouted, but Ellie was already backing away, her mind racing with questions. She had no idea who that man was or what he was capable of, but for the first time in a long while, she felt safe. After the confrontation, Ellie stood frozen in the alley behind the restaurant, staring down at the business card in her trembling hand. She had never expected her night to unfold like this. Tyler, the man who had tormented her for so long, was now cowering in the corner, humiliated, his bravado shattered by the stranger who had stepped in without hesitation. As Ellie tried to process what had just happened, her heart was still pounding in her chest. She hadn't felt like this in months. Safe. For the first time in so long, she didn't feel trapped, like a bird in a cage, too scared to fly. The man in the black suit had done something she didn't even know she needed. He had protected her. Ellie glanced down at the card again, her mind swirling with questions. Why had he helped her? Who was he? The only thing she knew for certain was that he wasn't just any random person. He was someone who could control a situation without even breaking a sweat. Her hand still clutched the card, but before she could think any further, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Tyler, looking more disheveled than ever, his face flushed with anger. "You think you can just walk away?" he sneered. "You think I'm just going to forget what happened tonight? You're mine, Ellie. No one steps in like that and gets away with it." Ellie felt her body stiffen. The fear she had learned to live with started creeping back into her chest, but there was something different this time. The man in the black suit had shown her that there were people out there who could stand up to Tyler. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face him alone. As Tyler took another step forward, she finally found her voice, though it trembled with a mix of fear and newfound strength. "I'm done with you, Tyler. I'm not your property anymore. You can't control me." Tyler laughed, but the sound was hollow, more out of frustration than amusement. "You think you can just walk away? You think I'm going to let that happen? You belong to me." Ellie shook her head, her heart racing as she backed away. She had heard those words too many times before, but this time, they didn't have the same power over her. Tyler's eyes narrowed, but before he could advance, a cold voice cut through the tension. "I think it's time you leave her alone." Ellie turned to see the man in the black suit standing in the entrance to the alley, his expression unreadable. His voice was calm, but there was an undeniable authority in it that made Tyler pause. Tyler looked back at the man, sizing him up, but there was something in the way the stranger stood, unmoved, unflinching, that made Tyler hesitate. "This doesn't concern you," Tyler growled, but the man didn't flinch. "It does now." With a flick of his wrist, two men appeared from the shadows, moving swiftly to flank the stranger. They were big, their suits tailored to fit their broad frames. Tyler's eyes darted from the stranger to his men and back again, but he didn't say another word. He knew when he was outmatched. With a final glare at Ellie, he turned on his heel and stormed off, muttering under his breath. Ellie let out the breath she didn't even know she was holding, her body shaking from the adrenaline rush. The man in the black suit stepped closer, his presence both calming and intimidating at the same time. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice low and measured. Ellie nodded, still trying to steady herself. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't." She stopped herself. She didn't even know his name. He had come out of nowhere, a stranger who had saved her from the man who had tormented her for months. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man studied her for a moment, then offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I'm someone who doesn't like seeing people hurt others, especially when they have no reason to." Ellie was still too stunned to fully comprehend the meaning behind his words. He didn't seem like the type to make empty promises or speak without purpose. His words carried weight, and his actions spoke louder than anything he could say. "Thank you," she repeated, her voice a little steadier now. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me," he said, his tone softening slightly. "But if you ever need help, or just someone to talk to, you can call me." He pulled out a new business card from his jacket and handed it to her. "I'll always be there." Ellie took the card, her fingers brushing against his as she did. There was something about him, something that made her feel both cautious and safe at the same time. "I'll keep it in mind," she said, still trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. "I'm Ellie, by the way." He nodded. "Nice to meet you, Ellie. I'm Gabriel." With that, he turned and walked away, his men following close behind. As she watched him disappear into the night, Ellie realized something that she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge in months. She wasn't alone. There were people out there who could help her, people who could protect her. And for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe things were finally starting to change. After Gabriel had left, Ellie stood there, still holding the business card in her hand. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything that had just happened. She had never been in a situation like this before, where someone had come to her aid without asking for anything in return. It was a strange feeling, relief mixed with a sense of vulnerability. She glanced down at the card again, her fingers tracing the elegant lettering as she tried to understand the man who had saved her. Gabriel. She had never seen him before, yet somehow he had been watching over her without her knowledge. A part of her felt uneasy about the way he had been able to intervene so smoothly, but another part of her was grateful. Maybe it was because for the first time in months, she didn't feel completely alone. She didn't know why he had helped her, but she didn't care. She was alive, she was safe, and that was enough for now. Tyler's angry face flashed in her mind. She had dealt with his tantrums and violent outbursts for so long that she almost couldn't remember a time when she wasn't afraid of him. But tonight was different. For the first time, she had stood up for herself, and Gabriel had been the unexpected ally who made sure Tyler wouldn't hurt her any longer. Still holding the card, Ellie walked back inside the restaurant, trying to shake off the tremors in her hands. She needed to get back to work, needed to focus on something other than the chaos that had just unfolded. She couldn't afford to fall apart now. As she moved through the bustling kitchen and into the dining area, she saw Marco, the floor manager, giving her a concerned look. He had noticed the exchange between her and Tyler earlier, and now, his gaze was fixed on her. "Are you okay?" Marco asked quietly, his voice laced with genuine concern. Ellie forced a smile, nodding. "Yeah, I'm fine," she lied, hoping it would be enough. Marco didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press the issue. Instead, he handed her a tray of drinks. "Table 6 is waiting for their wine." Ellie took the tray, the weight of it a welcome distraction. She walked to the table, her thoughts still swirling. She felt as if her entire world had shifted in the last few hours. She had always been on her own, always expected to handle everything herself. But Gabriel's intervention had shown her that there were people out there who would step in, even when she didn't ask for help. As she set the drinks down in front of the guests, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of the mirror on the wall. Her face looked different now, softer somehow, less guarded. She realized that something had changed in her. She wasn't the same girl who had walked into this restaurant earlier that evening. Ellie tried to focus on the customers, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Gabriel. Who was he? Why had he been watching her? And why had he stepped in when no one else had? The questions piled up, but for now, they had to wait. Her shift wasn't over yet, and she still had a job to do. But that night, when she finally got home to her tiny apartment, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the business card in her hand. The rain was falling softly outside her window, a soothing sound that seemed to wash away the tension she had been carrying for so long. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to think about something other than survival. She thought about the possibility of having someone in her corner. Someone who could protect her, who could give her the space to breathe. Gabriel had given her a glimpse of that, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than he had let on. As she placed the card on her nightstand and lay down, she closed her eyes, feeling an unfamiliar sense of peace wash over her. Tomorrow, she would call him. Maybe she didn't need to face everything alone anymore. Maybe there was a chance for a new beginning, one where she didn't have to live in fear. But tonight, she allowed herself to rest, to imagine a life without Tyler and without the constant dread that had ruled her for so long. She was safe now, and for the first time, that was enough. The next morning, Ellie woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. The rain from last night had stopped, leaving a soft, overcast sky outside her window. As she stretched and rubbed her eyes, the events of the previous night came rushing back. The confrontation with Tyler, the strange but comforting presence of Gabriel, and the card he had given her. She sat up on the edge of her bed, staring at the card for a long moment, her fingers tracing the smooth surface. It felt almost unreal, like she had stepped into a different world. A world where people cared, where she didn't have to fight alone. The clock on the wall reminded her that she had only a few hours before her shift at the restaurant. She had to decide what to do next. There was a part of her that wanted to call Gabriel immediately, ask him why he helped her, why he cared enough to step in when no one else had. But then another part of her hesitated. She wasn't used to relying on anyone. She had always kept her distance, always figured things out on her own. But last night had changed everything. Maybe it was time to stop running. With a deep breath, Ellie picked up the phone and dialed the number on Gabriel's card. The phone rang a few times before a voice answered, calm and steady. "Gabriel," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's Ellie. You gave me your card last night." There was a pause, and then Gabriel's voice came through the phone, smooth and reassuring. "Ellie, I'm glad you called. How are you doing?" "I'm okay," she replied, her fingers nervously tapping against the side of the phone. I don't really know what to say. I wasn't expecting to hear from you." Gabriel chuckled softly. "I'm not surprised. Most people don't expect someone like me to step in like that. But I don't like seeing people treated poorly. Especially not you." Ellie felt a warmth spread through her at his words, but also a pang of unease. "Why did you help me? I mean, I don't even know you." "Sometimes you don't need to know someone to know when they're in trouble," Gabriel replied. "And from the moment I saw you, I knew you didn't deserve what was happening to you. Tyler crossed a line, and I wasn't about to stand by and let that continue." Ellie bit her lip, feeling a mix of gratitude and confusion. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "I've been dealing with him for so long, and last night, I don't know. It felt like someone finally cared." "You don't need to thank me," Gabriel said, his tone softening. "But you do need to know that you don't have to face this alone. I can help if you'll let me." Ellie took a deep breath. She had never allowed herself to accept help, never allowed herself to lean on anyone. But the way Gabriel spoke made it hard to resist. There was a sincerity in his voice, an offer of safety that she didn't want to ignore. "I don't even know what that would look like," she admitted. "I've been on my own for so long. I don't even know where to start." "That's okay," Gabriel said. "One step at a time. You don't have to figure everything out right now. Just know that I'm here. If you need anything, you can call me." No questions asked. The words hung in the air between them, and Ellie felt her heart racing. Could she really trust him? Could she really allow herself to lean on someone else? It felt like such a foreign concept. But maybe, just maybe, it was what she needed. "Okay," she said, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I'll call you if I need help." Gabriel didn't respond right away, but Ellie could hear the faint sound of a smile in his voice. "Good. I'm glad to hear it." After a few more words of reassurance, they ended the call. Ellie sat there for a moment, the phone still in her hand. Her mind was spinning. She had called Gabriel, taken the first step, but now what? She didn't have all the answers, and she wasn't sure what her next move would be. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had options. Like there was a way out of the nightmare Tyler had created. As she prepared for her shift at the restaurant, Ellie's thoughts kept returning to Gabriel's words. She didn't have to face everything alone. That was a comfort she had never known before. And for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, her life could change. Tyler had controlled her for far too long, but now, things were different. She wasn't trapped anymore. She had choices. And with Gabriel's help, she was going to take them. It had been a week since Ellie had spoken to Gabriel. A week of small, tentative steps toward a life she never thought was possible. The weight of her past with Tyler still haunted her, but now there was a sense of relief she hadn't felt before. The phone call with Gabriel had changed something inside her, opening a door she never knew she had. She wasn't sure what it meant yet, but for the first time, she felt like she had options. She didn't have to be stuck in the same cycle of fear and helplessness. She had a way out. That evening, she found herself walking to the restaurant, the familiar streets of Manhattan feeling different now. The usual chaos of the city, the honking cars, the flashing lights. Everything seemed muted, as if the city was giving her a little more space to breathe. The weight of her past was still there, but it no longer felt as heavy. Gabriel had told her that she wasn't alone anymore. That thought stayed with her, like a lifeline she could grab whenever she felt like sinking. As Ellie entered the restaurant, Marco greeted her with a raised eyebrow. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yeah, just tired. But I'm good." She had been working more hours than ever to make up for the time she'd lost avoiding her responsibilities. But the shift tonight felt different. She felt lighter, somehow. Her mind kept drifting back to Gabriel's offer. He had said he could help, but she hadn't yet reached out to him again. The idea of trusting someone, truly trusting them, was still foreign to her. But there was something about Gabriel's voice, something about the way he had stepped in so effortlessly when no one else would, that made her believe he might actually be different. As the night wore on, The restaurant became busier, and Ellie's thoughts faded into the rhythm of serving drinks and delivering orders. She felt more present than she had in weeks. But as she was taking a drink order for table 5, she heard the unmistakable sound of someone calling her name. She turned, her heart skipping a beat as she saw him standing near the door. Gabriel. He was wearing the same tailored black suit, his dark hair slightly tousled from the wind outside. He looked out of place in the bustling restaurant, as if the chaotic noise and lights couldn't touch him. For a moment, she froze, unsure of how to react. But Gabriel's steady gaze never wavered. He was looking directly at her, as if nothing else in the room existed. She quickly composed herself and walked over to him, trying to hide the surprise that threatened to show. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I wanted to check on you," Gabriel said, his voice calm, but with an intensity that made her heart race. "I know it's been a week, but I've been thinking about you. You didn't call, and I wanted to make sure you're all right." Ellie swallowed, the weight of his concern settling in. She wasn't used to this, someone actually caring enough to check in. "I'm fine," she said quickly, trying to reassure him. "Really I am. Just adjusting, you know." Gabriel studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Ellie felt the urge to look away, but she couldn't. There was something about him that made her want to open up, to let go of the walls she'd spent so long building. "I get it," he said finally, his tone softening. "But don't forget that you don't have to do this alone. You've got me, remember?" Ellie's heart fluttered at his words, but she quickly pushed the feeling aside. She couldn't afford to get too close, too comfortable. That was always when things went wrong. "I appreciate it, Gabriel. Really. But I'm not sure I'm ready for all of this," she said, her voice trailing off. He smiled, though it was a small, understanding smile. "You don't have to be ready. I'm not going anywhere, Ellie." The sincerity in his voice took her by surprise, but it also made her chest tighten in a way she couldn't explain. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Gabriel nodded, his gaze lingering on her for a beat longer than necessary. "You won't have to find out. Now, let's get you through this shift. We can talk later, if you want." Ellie nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. As he walked away, disappearing back into the crowd of restaurant patrons, she felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. It was the first time in a long while that she had felt genuinely cared for. The shift passed without incident, and when it ended, Ellie stood outside the restaurant, the cool night air refreshing against her skin. She glanced down at the business card Gabriel had given her, still tucked securely in her pocket. It felt like a promise. A promise that, for once, someone was looking out for her. As she pulled out her phone to text him, she hesitated. The words didn't come easily, but she knew what she had to do. She couldn't keep hiding. Not from herself. Not from Gabriel. She typed quickly, "Hey, Gabriel. Thanks for checking in today. I'm ready to talk. I'll meet you tomorrow, if that works." As she pressed send, a wave of relief washed over her. She was ready to start over, ready to face what was next. And for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone. The next day, Ellie woke up with a nervous flutter in her stomach. She had sent Gabriel a message last night, and now it was time to meet him, for the first time in weeks. She was looking forward to something, but there was also a sense of dread. She had been running from the truth, from the choices that were in front of her, but today, she had to face them. Today, she had to make decisions. She got dressed quickly, opting for something simple, jeans and a fitted sweater. It was a rare day off from the restaurant, and as she walked through her small apartment, she couldn't help but feel like something was shifting inside her. She had been through so much, so many years of hiding, surviving, and pretending everything was okay. But meeting Gabriel had changed that. He had made her believe that things could be different, that she didn't have to be stuck in the life she had created for herself. After grabbing her coat, she grabbed her phone, glancing at the message from Gabriel once more. "Meet me at the cafe on the corner of 5th and Main at noon. I'll be waiting." She took a deep breath and left her apartment, the walk to the cafe giving her just enough time to calm her nerves. As she stepped into the bustling streets of Manhattan, the weight of the city seemed to fall away. There was something different about today, something that made the familiar chaos of the streets feel less overwhelming. It was as if, for the first time in a long time, she was in control. She arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, looking around nervously for Gabriel. The warm, comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as she stood by the entrance. She wasn't sure what to expect from this meeting. She had talked to Gabriel on the phone, but there was something about seeing him in person that made everything feel real. She was about to step into a world she had never allowed herself to imagine. As she walked in, her eyes scanned the room, landing on a man sitting at a table near the window. It was Gabriel. He was dressed in a casual but expensive-looking jacket and had a relaxed, yet confident air about him. He looked up as she approached, a smile lighting up his face. "Ellie," he said, his voice warm, "I'm glad you came." Ellie smiled back, feeling an unexpected surge of relief. "I wasn't sure what to expect, but I'm glad I'm here." Gabriel stood and pulled out the chair for her. She sat down across from him, the soft hum of conversation from the other patrons around them creating an oddly calming atmosphere. As they settled in, Gabriel's gaze softened. "How have you been?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. Ellie hesitated for a moment before answering. "I've been all right. Still trying to figure things out, I guess. But last night, when you stepped in for me, it made me realize I don't have to do this alone. It's just hard to believe sometimes." Gabriel nodded. "I understand. It's not easy to let go of the fear, to let yourself believe that there's someone out there who has your back. But you're not alone anymore, Ellie. I'll be here, whenever you need me." His words sent a wave of warmth through her chest. She had spent so many years in survival mode, never letting anyone get close, never trusting anyone. But here was this man, this stranger, offering her something she never thought possible, support. It was terrifying and comforting at the same time. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to thank me," Gabriel replied, his voice steady. "This is what I do, protecting people who deserve better. And you deserve better, Ellie. You deserve to live without fear, without feeling like you're trapped in a life you didn't choose." Ellie felt her throat tighten, the weight of his words sinking in. She had never allowed herself to believe that she deserved anything more than what she had. Working multiple jobs, living paycheck to paycheck, constantly looking over her shoulder. But Gabriel's words made her question everything. Did she deserve better? Did she deserve to be happy? "But I don't know what that looks like," she said, her voice soft. "I don't know how to just let go." Gabriel's expression softened. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. One step at a time. Let's start with today. Let's start by trusting that there's a way forward." Ellie looked at him, his calm confidence giving her something she hadn't felt in years, hope. "I'll try," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's all I'm asking," Gabriel replied with a smile. They spent the next hour talking about her life, about her struggles, about the things she wanted to change. Gabriel listened intently, offering encouragement when needed but never pushing her. It felt different, this conversation, like she was being heard for the first time in a long while. When they finally stood up to leave, Gabriel placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Remember, you're not alone," he said. Ellie nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in months. As she left the cafe, the cool air hit her face, but it didn't feel as cold as it used to. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. She wasn't alone anymore. The following week, Ellie found herself walking a new path, one she had never considered before. It was a little less uncertain than the one she had been on, but the unfamiliarity still made her feel uneasy. She had taken the first step by meeting Gabriel, and now she was facing the reality of trusting someone. For so long, she had shielded herself from anything that could hurt her, but now, Gabriel's words kept echoing in her mind. "You're not alone anymore." That thought stayed with her every day as she tried to move forward. Her shift at the restaurant passed like every other, but there was a difference this time. She wasn't looking over her shoulder, anticipating Tyler's angry face. She had finally broken free from the constant weight of fear. After work, she made her way home, her thoughts not on the piles of unpaid bills or the cramped apartment that was too small for all her dreams, but on Gabriel. He had been on her mind constantly since their meeting. Something about the way he spoke, the way he seemed so sure that she was worth protecting, had planted a seed of hope in her. She reached for her phone and hesitated for a moment before dialing his number. The sound of it ringing felt strangely comforting, like a reassurance that things were moving forward. Gabriel picked up after the second ring. "Ellie," his voice was calm and warm. "I was just about to call you." "Oh," she said, a little surprised. "I didn't mean to interrupt anything." "You're not," Gabriel assured her. "I was just thinking about how you're doing. How's everything going? Ellie smiled softly, his concern soothing her nerves. It's been a little strange, she admitted. But better. A lot better. I'm starting to feel like I'm actually in control of things, you know? I'm not living in fear anymore. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Gabriel responded, his voice steady and sincere. That's what I like to hear. You deserve to feel that way. You deserve to live without looking over your shoulder. Ellie felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. It was the kind of validation she had been craving for so long, but never received. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice soft. I never thought I could get to this point. I've spent so long thinking I was stuck in a life that wasn't mine to control. Gabriel's voice softened. I know it's hard to let go of old habits, Ellie. You've been fighting on your own for so long that it's hard to believe there's a way out. But you're already on your way. Don't let that doubt hold you back. She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. I'm trying not to, she said, feeling the weight of his encouragement. I want to keep going. I don't want to let fear control me anymore. There was a moment of silence before Gabriel spoke again, his tone filled with a hint of humor. That's the spirit. You're stronger than you think, Ellie. She smiled, the words touching something deep inside her. I'm trying to believe that. You don't have to try, Gabriel replied. You just need to know it. You've got this. They chatted for a few more minutes, about small things, how her day at the restaurant went, how his week had been, and what their plans for the weekend were. As she hung up, Ellie felt a sense of calm wash over her. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to live again, to imagine a life where she didn't have to fight every day. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was hers. That night, as she sat at her small kitchen table, staring out at the city lights, a thought occurred to her. She wasn't just a victim of her circumstances anymore. She was in control of her future. She had the power to decide what came next. And Gabriel had opened that door for her, had given her the courage to take the first step. She picked up her phone again, and, this time, sent a message. To Gabriel. Thank you for everything. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I'll be okay. She put the phone down, a quiet sense of peace settling in her heart. She wasn't sure where this path would take her, but for the first time, she didn't feel afraid to find out. 2 days later, Ellie found herself standing outside a sleek, modern building in downtown Manhattan. It was an office building, but the luxury of it made her feel like she was stepping into a world she didn't belong in. She had agreed to meet Gabriel here, but she wasn't entirely sure what to expect. She had spent the last few days trying to wrap her mind around everything he had said, the support, the protection, the promises. Her life was changing, and for the first time, it felt like it was changing for the better. She had texted Gabriel earlier in the day, telling him she was ready to take the next step. She still wasn't sure what exactly that meant, but she knew that she couldn't keep living the way she had been. She wanted more, and she was starting to believe she deserved it. As she walked into the building, the polished marble floors and chrome accents only heightened her sense of unease. She had never been comfortable in places like this. It felt too far removed from the cramped apartment she had grown up in, too different from the late-night shifts at the restaurant where she had learned how to survive. But she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. Gabriel had asked her to meet him here for a reason. As she reached the elevator, the doors opened, and she stepped inside. The ride up felt longer than it actually was, and Ellie tried to steady her nerves, her reflection in the mirrored walls staring back at her. She still wasn't used to feeling like this, hopeful, uncertain, and yet a little bit excited. When the elevator reached the top floor, the doors opened to reveal a large, well-appointed office. Gabriel stood at the far side of the room, his back to her as he looked out the window at the city below. He turned as he heard the doors open, and his face lit up with a smile that made Ellie's heart skip a beat. Ellie, he said, his voice calm and welcoming. I'm glad you could make it. Ellie smiled back, though she still felt a little out of place. Of course, she replied, stepping into the room. I wasn't sure what to expect, but here I am. Gabriel gestured toward a chair, and Ellie sat down, feeling a little more comfortable now that she was in the presence of someone who had given her hope. He had said before that he was here to help her, but she wasn't sure what that help would look like. So what's next? Ellie asked, her voice steady, though she felt a flutter of nervousness in her chest. Gabriel regarded her for a moment, his eyes thoughtful. Next, he said slowly, is you deciding what you want out of this. I told you I'd be here to help, but the decision is yours. It's time for you to take control of your life, Ellie. His words were simple, but heavy with meaning. Ellie had spent so much of her life being controlled by others, by Tyler, by her circumstances, by fear. But now, Gabriel was offering her something different. Control, choice, freedom. It was more than she had ever dared to ask for. She felt her chest tighten as she took in his words. I don't even know where to start, she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel smiled gently. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but we can figure it out together. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. I want to help you get to a place where you feel safe, where you feel like you're not just surviving, but living. You've been through a lot, and you deserve to have a life where you feel empowered. Ellie nodded slowly, her emotions swirling inside her. She had spent so much time fighting for survival that she had forgotten what it was like to just live. She had never allowed herself to hope for anything more. But Gabriel's words made her feel like maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the cycle she had been trapped in for so long. I want that, she said softly, the words slipping out before she could second-guess herself. I want to feel like I'm in control. I want to be more than just the person who's always looking over her shoulder. Gabriel's smile deepened, and Ellie could see the genuine pride in his eyes. That's the first step, Ellie. You're already on your way. He stood up and walked over to the desk, pulling out a folder from one of the drawers. He placed it on the table in front of her. This is everything you need to take control. It's a plan, a blueprint for the next phase of your life. We'll start small, but it'll get you where you need to be. Ellie stared at the folder, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for it. She wasn't sure what was inside, but the idea of having a plan, a path to follow, felt like a lifeline. What is this? She asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Gabriel's eyes gleamed with confidence. It's a new beginning, he said. A new life for you. No more hiding. No more fear. It's time for you to live on your own terms. Ellie opened the folder slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside, there were documents. Everything from financial plans to safety measures to information about finding a place of her own. It was all laid out in front of her, a roadmap to the future she had only dared to dream of. This is real, she whispered, her breath catching in her throat. This is really happening. Gabriel nodded, his tone serious. You're ready, Ellie, and you don't have to do it alone. Ellie looked up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt like she had a future she could control. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to thank you for all of this. Gabriel gave her a reassuring smile. You don't need to thank me. Just trust the process. And remember, I'm here whenever you need me. Ellie took a deep breath, looking at the documents in front of her. This was the beginning of something new, something she had never thought possible. She wasn't sure how the road ahead would unfold, but for the first time, she was ready to walk it. And she wasn't walking alone. The days that followed were a blur of new beginnings for Ellie. She had spent so much time looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next blow to fall, that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to look forward. But now, things were changing. Gabriel's plan, laid out so clearly in front of her, was her chance to build a new life. One where she didn't have to be afraid. One where she wasn't constantly surviving, but actually living. She spent the next few days going through the documents Gabriel had given her, learning about the steps she needed to take. The first task was to find a new place to live. Her apartment, with its peeling paint and creaky floors, was a constant reminder of the life she was trying to leave behind. Gabriel had already arranged for a safe place for her to stay temporarily, but finding a more permanent home was the next step. Ellie didn't know where to begin. She had never had the luxury of choosing a place to live. It had always been about finding the cheapest option that wouldn't leave her in the streets. But now, with Gabriel's help, she was looking at listings for apartments in neighborhoods she had never dreamed of living in. She had always wanted a quiet place, somewhere she could breathe, somewhere she could find peace. The first place she visited was in a neighborhood she had only seen from a distance. It was a small, two-bedroom apartment on the top floor of a building with a view of the city. The moment she stepped inside, Ellie could feel the difference. The apartment was bright, airy, and the kind of place she could imagine herself living in, cooking dinner in a real kitchen, curling up on a couch with a good book, or just sitting by the window and watching the world go by. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. It could be hers. As she walked through the apartment, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time, she allowed herself to think about what it would be like to have a home, a place where she didn't have to worry about what would happen next. She could picture herself here, starting a new chapter of her life. When Gabriel called her later that day, she couldn't wait to tell him. "I found it," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "I found the place." "That's great," Gabriel replied, his tone warm and pleased. "How does it feel?" "It feels right," she said softly, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I've never had a place like this before. It's mine." Gabriel's voice was quiet, but she could tell he was smiling. "I'm proud of you, Ellie. You're doing it. You're taking control." Ellie's heart swelled at his words. For so long, she had felt powerless. But now, with every decision, every step she took, she was reclaiming her life. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something. "Thank you," she whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you. You did all the work, Ellie. You're the one who made the decision to change. I'm just here to support you." His words were comforting, but Ellie knew that they meant something more. He was right. She was the one who had made the choice to take a different path. And now, she was walking down it, step by step. Over the next week, Ellie finished the process of moving into her new apartment. Gabriel had helped her with everything, from finding movers to making sure she felt safe in her new place. It felt surreal. The city that had once felt so overwhelming now felt like a place of possibilities. When she stood in her new living room, looking out at the skyline, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. She wasn't alone. She wasn't trapped. She had a future, and for the first time, it felt like a future she could control. But even as Ellie settled into her new life, she knew there was more work to be done. She needed to heal, to rebuild the parts of herself that had been broken over the years. And for that, she needed time. Time to learn how to trust. Time to let go of the fear that had been her constant companion. Gabriel had given her the space to do that, but she knew she had to take the next steps on her own. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be setbacks, moments when she doubted herself, moments when the old fears crept back in. But for the first time, Ellie believed she could face them. The sound of her phone buzzing interrupted her thoughts, and she smiled when she saw Gabriel's name on the screen. She picked it up, her heart a little lighter than it had been just a few weeks ago. "Hey," she said. "How's everything going?" "I was just thinking about you," Gabriel said, his voice warm. "How's the new place?" "It's great," Ellie replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "It's everything I've wanted. I'm starting to feel like I'm actually living." "Good," Gabriel said. "You deserve that, Ellie. You deserve to live without fear." His words, so simple and sincere, were exactly what she needed to hear. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet. "For everything." "You don't have to thank me," Gabriel replied. "You did this. You're the one who chose this path. I'm just here to help you stay on it." Ellie smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And with Gabriel by her side, she knew that she could face whatever came next. Ellie's new life felt almost too good to be true. The apartment she had chosen, the new routine, and the sense of control she was slowly gaining were all so different from the world she had lived in before. There was a calmness to her days now, an inner peace that she hadn't known was possible. She no longer lived in the shadows of fear, constantly worrying about Tyler's next move or whether she'd have enough money to get by. Now, she had space, both physically and emotionally, to breathe. It wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, Ellie felt like she was moving forward. But as much as her world was changing, there were moments when the old doubts crept in. What if it was all just temporary? What if she was fooling herself into thinking she had control, when in reality, everything could come crashing down again? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Gabriel. "How's everything going?" "You good?" Ellie smiled softly at the message. Gabriel had become an unexpected constant in her life. He had helped her find her footing, but he never pressured her. He was there when she needed him, but he also respected her space and time. That night, she met him for dinner. They had always kept things casual, no pressure, no expectations, but something about tonight felt different. She was nervous, but it wasn't the same nervousness that had kept her on edge around Tyler. This was different. This was a nervous excitement, a fluttering in her stomach that made her wonder, If maybe there was more between them than just friendship. When she arrived at the small, quiet restaurant Gabriel had suggested, he was already waiting for her at a corner table. He smiled when he saw her, and Ellie couldn't help but smile back. The way he looked at her, with such warmth and genuine interest, made her feel like she mattered. It was something she had never experienced before. As they sat down, Gabriel ordered for both of them, and they talked about their week. Ellie told him about her job at the restaurant, about how much she enjoyed the new apartment, and how she was slowly but surely getting used to the idea of living without fear. Gabriel listened, always attentive, his eyes focused on her as if she were the only person in the room. "I'm proud of you, Ellie," he said, his voice sincere. "You've come so far. You've really taken control of your life." Ellie felt a warmth spread through her at his words, but a part of her still felt unsure. "I'm not sure I deserve all of this," she said softly, her fingers tracing the edge of her glass. "You do," Gabriel replied, leaning forward slightly. "You've worked hard for it, and you're finally letting yourself have the life you deserve." Ellie looked at him, the sincerity in his eyes making her chest tighten. "Thank you, Gabriel, for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you." Gabriel's smile softened. "You would have figured it out. You're stronger than you think." Ellie wasn't so sure about that, but she liked the way he made her feel. Safe, capable, like she was worthy of more than just scraping by. They spent the rest of the evening talking and laughing, the easy rhythm of their conversation making Ellie forget about everything else. For once, she wasn't thinking about the past, about the years spent with Tyler or the constant struggle to make ends meet. She was just here, in the moment, with Gabriel. As they finished dinner, Gabriel walked her outside, and they stood for a moment under the streetlight, the cool air brushing against their skin. Ellie felt a sense of hesitation, like she wanted to say something, but wasn't sure how to put it into words. Gabriel turned to her, his expression gentle. "Is something on your mind?" he asked. Ellie bit her lip, nervous but determined to be honest. "I don't know if I'm ready for more than just what we've been doing. I don't know if I can trust myself with that." Gabriel studied her for a moment, his eyes soft, understanding. "Ellie, you don't have to rush anything. You're not alone in this. You've already taken so many brave steps. I'm here with you, whatever comes next." His words were a balm to her fears, and Ellie felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she realized that maybe she didn't have to have it all figured out. Maybe she didn't have to be afraid of what the future held. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm glad you're here." Gabriel smiled. "I'm not going anywhere, Ellie. I told you, I'm here for the long haul." And for the first time, Ellie believed him. She didn't know what the future would look like, but with Gabriel by her side, she was ready to face it. For once, she wasn't afraid of what was coming. She was ready to live, truly live. The weeks passed, and Ellie's life continued to change in ways she hadn't thought possible. The apartment was now her home, a place where she could finally relax and feel at ease. The bustling streets of Manhattan outside her window no longer felt intimidating, but energizing. For the first time in years, she felt like she was in control of her own destiny. Gabriel was still there, his presence a comforting constant. They spoke almost every day, but their conversations had started to shift. He wasn't just helping her anymore. He was becoming someone she looked forward to talking to, someone she trusted in a way she had never trusted anyone before. One afternoon, as Ellie was finishing up a shift at the restaurant, she got a text from Gabriel. "How's your week going? Want to grab dinner later?" She smiled, her fingers quickly typing a response. "Sure, I'm free around 7. Let's do it." Dinner had become their thing. It wasn't just about food. It was the time they spent together, the moments where they didn't have to talk about the hard stuff, the times when they could simply be themselves. When Ellie arrived at the small bistro they frequented, Gabriel was already seated at their usual table, looking as calm and composed as always. His smile when he saw her made her heart flutter in a way she didn't expect. "Hey there," Gabriel said as she sat down. "How's everything going?" "Good," Ellie replied, her voice light. But there was something more in her words now. She wasn't just surviving anymore. "It's actually going really well. I feel like I'm finally getting my life together." Gabriel raised an eyebrow, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I'm glad to hear that. I've noticed the change. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." Ellie felt her cheeks flush, but there was a warmth in her chest she couldn't deny. "Thanks," she said, feeling the truth of his words. It had been hard, but every small step she took was a victory, and she had Gabriel to thank for that. They talked about her progress, about her apartment, about the new people she had met at work. They laughed, joked, and for a while, it felt like everything was just as it should be. But then, as the night wore on, their conversation shifted. Gabriel's tone became more serious, his eyes locking onto hers. "Ellie," he began, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you. You've come so far in such a short time, and I'm really proud of you. But I also know that there's still a lot you're carrying. I just want to make sure you're really ready for what comes next." Ellie paused, feeling a small knot tighten in her stomach. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. Gabriel took a deep breath before answering. "I know you're doing well, but I want to make sure you're not doing it because you feel like you have to. You deserve to live freely, Ellie. Not because you're running from your past, but because you've decided you want something more." Ellie felt a surge of emotion, and for a moment, she couldn't find the words. She had spent so much time surviving that she hadn't really thought about what she wanted. What did she want? For years, she had been focused on just making it through each day, but now, there was something else, something more. She thought about Gabriel's words, his unwavering support, and the way he had stood by her from the start. She realized then that she had been afraid to hope, afraid to dream because it felt too risky. But Gabriel was right. She had been running from the fear, not living because she was truly ready to. "I think I am ready," Ellie said, her voice steadier now. "But I'm not sure what that looks like yet." Gabriel smiled, his expression softening. "That's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just take your time, and when you're ready, you'll know. And I'll be here, no matter what." Ellie smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was alone in this. She didn't have to have all the answers, and she didn't have to face her past alone. Gabriel was right. She had come so far, but there was still more to be done. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't afraid of what the future held. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of emotion. "For everything." Gabriel reached across the table, taking her hand gently in his. "You don't have to thank me. You've done the hard part. I'm just here to walk with you." For a moment, they just sat there, the quiet comfort of their connection wrapping around them like a warm blanket. Ellie realized then that she was no longer stuck. She was moving forward, not just with Gabriel's help, but with her own strength. She was ready to face whatever came next, no matter how uncertain it might seem. She wasn't just living to survive anymore. She was living to thrive. As the weeks passed, Ellie began to settle into her new life. Her days were no longer consumed by worry or fear. The apartment was hers. The job at the restaurant was manageable, and she was learning to navigate the world outside the shadows of her past. The change felt almost surreal at times, like she had woken up from a long, dark dream. Gabriel had kept his word. He had been there for her every step of the way. But now, Ellie felt a growing sense of independence, a realization that she was capable of doing this on her own. She had made it this far, and with each day, she was becoming more of the person she had always wanted to be. Someone strong, someone confident. One evening, as she was finishing her shift at the restaurant, Ellie received a call from Gabriel. She hadn't seen him in a few days, and the familiar sound of his voice on the other end of the line made her heart skip a beat. "Hey, Ellie," he said, his tone light but filled with warmth. "How's everything going?" "Good," she replied, smiling to herself. "Busy but good. How about you?" "Same here," Gabriel said with a chuckle. "Listen, I've been thinking. How about we do something different this weekend? Maybe take a break from everything and get away for a little while." Ellie paused, her mind racing. A part of her had always been too focused on survival to think about taking a break, but something about Gabriel's suggestion felt right. "Get away?" she repeated, unsure. "Where would we go?" "I was thinking about the coast," Gabriel said. "Just for a weekend. We could rent a small cabin by the beach. No distractions, just some time to relax. What do you think?" Ellie took a deep breath. The idea of a getaway, a real break from her everyday routine, seemed like the perfect opportunity. For so long, she had been trapped in a cycle of worry and fear, and now, she had the chance to do something different. "I think that sounds amazing," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "I could definitely use a weekend to just breathe." "Great," Gabriel said, his voice full of relief. "I'll make the arrangements, and we'll leave Friday evening. It'll be good for both of us." Ellie smiled to herself. The thought of spending time with Gabriel, away from everything, was exactly what she needed. As the weekend approached, Ellie found herself filled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. She had never allowed herself the luxury of a real break before. Every weekend had been spent working, trying to catch up on bills, or making sure she was always one step ahead of the chaos. But now, this trip felt different. It felt like a step toward something more, toward healing, toward a life she could finally enjoy. On Friday evening, as she packed her bags for the trip, Ellie felt a sense of lightness she hadn't felt in years. She was leaving behind the stress of work, the worry about the future, and most importantly, she was leaving behind the fear of the past. This was her time to be free. When she arrived at the cabin Gabriel had rented, she was amazed at how peaceful it was. The small, cozy cabin sat just a few hundred feet from the beach, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the air. It was exactly what she needed, quiet, serene, and beautiful. Gabriel greeted her with a smile as he opened the door. "Welcome to paradise," he said, his eyes sparkling. Ellie stepped inside, taking in the simple but comfortable surroundings. The cabin had a rustic charm to it, with wooden beams and large windows that let in the natural light. "It's perfect," she whispered, her eyes taking in the view of the ocean in the distance. Gabriel smiled, stepping aside to let her explore. "I'm glad you like it. I thought it would be nice for us to get away from everything for a while." Ellie nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. For so long, she had been on edge, constantly fighting to keep everything together. But now, she felt like she could finally relax. They spent the next 2 days in total relaxation, walking along the beach, talking for hours, and even cooking meals together in the cozy kitchen of the cabin. For the first time in a long time, Ellie allowed herself to enjoy the simplicity of life. She realized that she had been so focused on survival that she had forgotten what it felt like to truly live. Gabriel was patient with her, allowing her to open up at her own pace, but never pushing her. He listened to her as she talked about her past, about the things she had been through, but he never judged her. For the first time in her life, Ellie felt seen for who she really was. On the last evening of their trip, as they sat outside by a small fire pit, watching the stars above, Gabriel turned to her with a serious expression. "Ellie," he said softly, "I know you're still working through a lot, but I want you to know something. You're not alone in this. Whatever happens, I'm here for you. I always will be." Ellie looked at him, her heart full of emotions she couldn't quite put into words. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice thick with gratitude. "I don't think I could have gotten this far without you." Gabriel smiled, his eyes full of understanding. "You've done all the work, Ellie. I'm just here to help you realize how strong you really are." As they sat there together, the waves crashing in the background, Ellie realized that she wasn't afraid anymore. She had faced her past, started to rebuild her life, and was beginning to understand just how much power she had to create the future she wanted. With Gabriel's support, she knew that anything was possible. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And for the first time, Ellie was truly happy. It had been a few months since Ellie and Gabriel returned from their getaway. Life had continued to unfold in ways she never imagined. The apartment was now home. The restaurant job was no longer the overwhelming source of stress it once was, and the fear of Tyler's looming presence had all but disappeared. Gabriel had kept his promise. He had been there, a steady force of support and encouragement. But now, Ellie found herself at a new crossroads. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And with that thriving came new challenges. She had grown comfortable with her life, comfortable with the idea of having a future, something she never truly believed she could have. But now, it was time for her to take the final step into her own future. One afternoon, as she sat in her apartment, working on some paperwork for her job, Ellie's phone buzzed. She saw Gabriel's name light up the screen. A smile tugged at her lips as she answered. "Hey, Gabriel. What's up?" "Hey, Ellie. I've been thinking," Gabriel said, his tone warm but with a hint of something serious behind it. "About what?" Ellie asked, curious. "About you," he replied. "I know you've come so far, and I'm really proud of you. But there's something else I think you need to do now. Something for yourself." Ellie's brow furrowed slightly as she listened. "What do you mean?" Gabriel paused for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "You've built this new life, but I think it's time you start living it fully. It's time to move on from the past completely. Take the final step and claim the future you deserve. I think it's time for you to stop letting your past define you and start looking ahead to your future without any lingering doubts. Ellie felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. She had made so many strides, but could she really let go of everything? Could she finally stop looking over her shoulder? Gabriel continued, sensing her hesitation. You've got everything you need now, Ellie. You've got the strength, the control, the independence. All that's left is for you to believe in yourself the way I believe in you. Ellie took a deep breath, his words echoing in her mind. She knew Gabriel was right. She had already come so far, and the only thing standing in her way now was herself. I know, she said softly, the weight of his words settling deep inside her. I've been holding on to the fear for so long, I didn't know how to let it go. But I think I'm ready. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and when Gabriel spoke again, his voice was filled with pride. I'm proud of you, Ellie. You're stronger than you think. Ellie smiled, the words giving her the strength she needed. She was ready. The next morning, Ellie woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She had made her decision. It was time to finally take control of her life and embrace everything she had worked so hard to build. She wasn't going to let fear hold her back anymore. She wasn't going to let her past dictate her future. As she walked through the city streets later that day, Ellie felt different. There was a lightness in her step, a confidence that hadn't been there before. She was no longer the woman who feared what would come next. She was the woman who was ready to take on whatever came her way. That afternoon, she took another step forward. She called her old therapist, the one she hadn't spoken to in months. She scheduled an appointment for the following week. She wasn't done healing yet, but she was no longer afraid to face the process head-on. That evening, Gabriel came over to her apartment for their usual dinner, but tonight felt different. There was something unspoken between them, a shift in the air that neither of them had acknowledged, but both of them could feel. As they sat down to eat, Gabriel looked at her with a soft smile. How are you doing? He asked. I'm doing great, Ellie said, her voice filled with a calm certainty she hadn't had before. I think I'm finally ready to let go of everything that's holding me back and start living the life I've always wanted. Gabriel's smile widened, and for the first time, Ellie didn't feel any uncertainty about her decision. She was ready. She was ready to embrace her future, to fully step into the life she had worked so hard to build. I knew you would get here, Gabriel said quietly, and I'll be here every step of the way. They sat together in comfortable silence, the quiet of the evening settling around them. Ellie knew there would still be challenges ahead. There would always be moments of doubt and fear, but she was no longer afraid to face them. She had taken back control of her life. She had taken back her future. And with that, Ellie knew she was ready to live fully, to embrace everything that was waiting for her. This was only the beginning, and she was finally ready to take the next step without looking back. Experience the captivating world of dark romance where power, passion, and mystery intertwine to create an unforgettable love story. In this journey, a woman escapes from an abusive past, finding herself in a new life filled with uncertainty and excitement. As she navigates the complexities of trust, survival, and healing, she encounters a man who becomes her protector, guiding her through the shadows of her past. With each step, she learns what it means to truly live, no longer defined by fear or regret. The story is a testament to strength and resilience, as she breaks free from her tormentor and learns to embrace love and freedom. A thrilling dark romance unfolds as she learns to trust again, facing the darkness of her history while stepping into a future filled with possibilities. This dark romance is not just about escaping pain, but about finding empowerment and hope as the protagonist learns that her past does not define her future. The bond between the two characters grows stronger with every challenge, and their love transforms into something that heals the wounds of the past. In the end, they both realize that love, no matter how dark, can offer redemption and a new beginning. Let yourself be swept away in this dark romance as you witness a journey of self-discovery, trust, and the power of love to overcome even the darkest of times.